Don't know nothing.
What you know, Joe?
Tell me something. Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's, brought to you by Big Heads Media and MyBookie. Right now, if you sign up on MyBookie through a link in the article for this show on Big Heads Media or on Purple PTSD / Vikings Territory, you get they match your first deposit. So if you put $100 in, they'll match you at $100 up to I think a few $1,000s. So if you have money to burn and you want some free money on the side of it, go to the link through the article. But I am Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and PurpleTerritoryRadio.com, here with Mr. Joe Oberly.
Hello. Good morning.
What's up? Editor of the aforementioned network of websites. How are you, man? It was a very good game, but a very nerve-wracking game on Sunday night.
It was. I went down to the wire, as you all know, and so did my frazzled nerves. It was I would seen it too often in the past, and saw it in the previous week where the Vikings couldn't make a first down in the fourth quarter when they needed to finish a game, and and it looked like the script was ready to repeat itself. I was mightily concerned, and even until the last moment when Jaron Kearse jumped up and grabbed that Hail Mary pass, it was still could go either way, and it would have been a heartbreaking defeat that might have sent this team packing if they had lost that one.
Yeah,
so it was great to see.
I think it's a very salient point that you say that. I think a lot of people are celebrating the win, obviously, as they should. I've been very happy about it. But had they lost that game, not so much on the Hail Mary, but on the drive before it, I think we'd be talking about a lot of different things. Because for whatever reason, I remember in the live chat, everyone was freaking out about the play calling that they had in that final drive that the Vikings had on offense. They had that weird pass to Cook that didn't work, which I guess I applaud for not doing the standard thing. You know, I don't want to sit here and say, well, it didn't work, so screw it. I mean, I like that they tried something different. I think Zimmer had a mindset in that game. I actually wrote a quote down of his about either way the bullets were going to be unloaded from the gun one way or the other in Dallas, meaning that I really think he and the coaching staff in general were a lot more aggressive in this game than they were in Kansas City, which I applaud. That's what I was complaining about, so obviously I can't not applaud it. But outside of that, you know, I think a lot of the play calling was different and more aggressive than it had been. But yeah, man, if Kendricks wouldn't have stopped them on fourth down, who knows? Because they were really not doing well, especially on third down and third and longs in the game. They were just giving up tons of first downs to this Dallas offense, which, I mean, do you tie that to Dak's mobility, or what do you
Before I go there, I just want to chime in on that play calling. I liked it too. I mean, that was my biggest problem with the Chiefs game, that they ran Dalvin 3 times into the line, which hadn't been working, and or whatever, and you aren't going to get a first down that way. So you're basically just trying to eat clock without any imagination. Well, on this play, they sprint him out to the left through a quick screen pass that had plenty of room, and that would have gotten a first down and eaten some clock. And so I was loving the play call. Was not loving the execution, unfortunately. And
those screens have been working all game.
Right. From that point on, then they just got conservative again. They panicked, because they almost fumbled it. Yeah, and my heart dropped, as everybody, their Vikings fans did. But they went back to the old thing, and they couldn't even gain a yard, much less a first down to ice the game. So applaud the aggressiveness. Zimmer going forward on fourth down in the red zone with Dalvin Cook, 4th and 2 for the touchdown, and he was rewarded for that. So I love seeing it. You've got to be smart when you do it. I mean, it's just not a matter of just emptying your gun or whatever it is, but you have to be smart when you get aggressive, and I think he was, and so it was great to see. And You hate to go down and lose when you haven't exhausted everything you've got to try to win the game. So that's a good sign. I hope that doesn't scare them away from ever trying something like that again, because it was they've got the best running back in the league. They should find use what's working with him in a very crucial situation like that, rather than ram him into the line where he'd been taken away the whole time. So.
A la the Chiefs game.
Right.
And then they went for it on 4th down when Cook scored that 2-yard touchdown, which decimated any chance that I had to come back with Tyler Lockett. Joe and I went head-to-head in fantasy this weekend, and I lost, of course. My lead in the prediction segment was short-lived, as I expected it to be. I always like to peak right around mid-season and then fall apart.
Well, we really know that's what all the listeners have tuned in for, our fantasy league prediction stuff. So get that in the front.
Okay, so my quarterback got 18.2 points. Now, let me tell you where those points came from. But yeah, again, I applaud the play calling, the aggressiveness of it. I think that we saw some more Kubiak this week. At least that's the bird's eye view, with the return with a vengeance of Kyle Rudolph, who had one of the most beautiful touchdowns I think I've ever seen. That first touchdown grab that he had was very Randy Moss-esque. And he had the second touchdown as well. It was great to see Rudy get his, but it was also great to see, I think Cousins distributed the ball to 8 different receivers in the game. So, and that's without Thielen playing. So you can imagine what would happen if we had Thielen out there. But it was a really big team win. But it was great to see Rudy get his after the start to his season.
Absolutely was. I don't know if you saw my story that I posted yesterday on
both the sites.
Yes, the great grab. The game was filled with a lot of great catches, and I talked about Rudy's. I talked about Stephon Diggs. Oh my God!
On that 3rd down.
Oh, that catch backwards. It was just, I go into pretty good detail on it, and it was just a fantastic grab. And then there were the 2 sideline toe tappers by Amari Cooper. So if you like passing games. And great catches. That was a game that you certainly were entertained.
Those may have been the most undefensible catches of the Amari Cooper ones. They were
that's what I said.
Multiple yards out of.
You can't defend it. Yeah, that's what I said in the chat. I just basically said no. There's no defensing that. It's if they threw it where the other guys can't get it. He's either going to make the grab like that, or it's going to be an incomplete pass out of bounds. And that's a smart play. It's a great play. It's a great pass. And to be honest, for guys like you and me, we've been seeing that all our lives with Chris Carter, right?
Moss used to do it.
We're kind of used to that, and but as I went on to the story, not to float my own boat again, but you saying that it was Moss-like Rudy's catch. On Monday Night Football with the 49ers, they had this big halftime feature on the catch. And Joe Montana to Dwight Clark in the 1981 NFC Championship. And so I said, I described that a little bit, tying it all together, and said I'll say 2 things about that. The catch game against Dallas, too, and Rudy's catch was better than Dwight Clark. So I'm there. But anyway, for me, I just love the passing game, and there were so many in this game that it almost became.
You
didn't even appreciate how good these catches were, because they just kept happening. So
what a great game / advertisement for the NFL, for that to be the Sunday night matchup. These 2 teams that have this great nationwide following, and just to come out and perform at the level that they did under the lights, which we'll get into in a second, because that's been a criticism of both Cousins and Zimmer, that they perform poorly in nationally televised games or against good teams in big spots. But I didn't have this on the agenda, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the defensive game plan, because clearly they were scheming to limit Ezekiel Elliott's impact, and they did a very good job of doing that, especially considering Linval Joseph did not play, and neither did Trey Waynes, who is really underrated in regards to his ability to tackle and how well he defends against run plays. At points, though, it felt like maybe they needed to switch things up a little bit because the Cowboys, I think the stats were, at one point they were 9 of 12 on third down. They ended the game at 9 of 15. They had 5 first downs on 3rd and 7 or longer. They had a lot of really big chunk yardage, especially between the 20s. The Vikings did tighten things up in the red zone, a la the Chiefs game, but it just felt like the secondary was getting just gashed. I know Mike Hughes was getting picked on early in the game, and he had a couple really close plays, almost 2 interceptions. He had that hit that was just sick, and it was legal too. That was the best part about it. So he had some really big splash plays, but I don't think his debut starting went as well as maybe perhaps some of the people who have been advocating for him to take over for Rhodes or Waynes would have hoped, because I think he, in the first half anyway, he was giving up 50% of like a catch rate versus a defense rate. So yeah, I kind of felt like, man, and you would think that with the secondary struggling like it has in 4 out of the last 5 games, that maybe they would focus on that versus stopping Ezekiel Elliott, or maybe they thought, we can't really shore up our secondary, so let's focus on that, and then we're going to get beat in the pass game anyway. I just wanted your thoughts on it.
On Mike Hughes? Or what?
On Hughes, or just the game plan focusing on stopping the run game. Meanwhile, the secondary was getting just taken to behind the shed.
Well, I don't know if it's so much a poor game plan, because I thought it's great that they stopped Ezekiel Elliott. He's an excellent part of that offense, and there are times Dak Prescott is, when he's had to put the game on his shoulders and not always come through, he's a little shaky. He can throw the ball a mile, but he's had some problems as well. So Zeke is a more consistent, tough person to stop. So they focused in on him, which I thought was interesting, given that Linval Joseph wasn't playing the game. So
yeah.
And the guys that filled in for him, just Zimmer was talking at his press conference just now, a few minutes ago at 10 o'clock, that the front seven just did a bang-up job today and in that game. So I think it's not so much game planning is poor execution. The secondary just had a lot of problems. I thought Mike Hughes started slow, and Prescott was certainly picking on him because he was the new guy starting, but he started after he had that hit you just described, and another play before that, he started to settle in a little bit, and he started, getting his feet under him, some, but they still came after him, and he's got to learn, in this position just like everybody else, and the more opportunities to start, the better he's going to get. I was not woefully disappointed in him. I thought, since they did focus on him, Xavier probably had a better game because he wasn't that active.
Yeah.
Than he has.
I thought the same thing.
And maybe Holden Hill had a couple plays, so I thought that was
he did.
Okay. But when you put it all together, 397 yards passing given up. Oh my goodness, that's not good. And something's got to change there. It kind of puts a premium on the talents of Trey Waynes, who was missing. So they got to get him back out there. I think they need the full complement. I mean, they're all capable of making plays from here and there. It's just a matter of how many, and eventually that you're going to break down. So maybe you need a lot of depth there. I think they've got it. They were going against the number 1 offense in the league yardage wise. So
that's true.
You got to understand that.
Yeah,
so
Dak was doing a lot of what the Vikings defense has always struggled with, which is extending plays. I think any defense would struggle with that, obviously. But I think there also was not just a crap on the secondary, but there's been a distinct lack of pressure these last few weeks too. Whether it's because like the Chiefs were, chipping and bringing tight end and fullback help, or rather running back help. I would like to see more out of Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin, especially Linval when he's back, perhaps bringing some pressure up the middle. But those guys, I know Everson came off a really rough season, and he was really looking like he returned to form earlier in the season. But
he has.
It just doesn't feel like they're getting a lot of pressure. Maybe on paper they are, but I just don't seem to what's his name? Odenabo got some pressure again. He's been doing well when he's in there. But other than that, yeah, it's just that's part of it, I'm sure. I mean, it's not all in the secondary.
No, pressure is a big deal, and that's what Zimmer's defense is predicated upon. I think Danielle Hunter has done well in that. I think Everson Griffith is having a good season, but we're talking about extended seasons there. This was a game where they didn't get as much pressure, and there's a good reason why. That's for the past few years, that's been one of the best offensive lines in the league.
Yeah, they're big guys.
Right, you can't discount that, and I don't think a person can say there's issues in this regard based on one game going against one of the best offenses in the league and best offensive lines. So I'm gonna reserve total.
I felt like maybe they didn't get enough pressure against Chase Daniel in the Bears game. I would say the same thing against the Chiefs, but they were really loading up. They had those two guys out on their line, so they were really, really trying to get as much help back there for what's his face as they could, Matt Moore.
They needed more pressure. I'm gonna agree to that, but
okay.
And they need to going forward. But I'm not going to worry about them as an issue for the whole year, because in general the defensive line has played well. Danielle Hunter's done well. Everson Griffith's done well, and when he's healthy, Joseph has. And they may not have the big sack numbers, but they're not way down the list either. So I saw somewhere that Danielle Hunter is pretty high in pressures this year. So
yeah, I also saw a weird stat that I wanted your thoughts on when I was doing prep for this show. I was reading. I like to read the opposing views of. So like I'll type in Broncos Vikings keys to the game, and then I'll read what the Broncos writers say, because I think you get a different perspective when you're not in the bubble. And this isn't really an example of that, but I'm just explaining why I read this. But they were talking about what's his face, Allen, Brandon Allen, the quarterback that the Vikings are going to face this upcoming Sunday, and they said the Vikings are the number one defense in the league in regards to passes defensed. I hadn't heard that before, and I don't think that stat by itself. It's a lot more complicated than that, and that's why some of these stats are they don't tell the whole story, I don't think.
Agreed.
Because the pass defense, that's a volume-based stat, right? So maybe they're throwing more balls at this defense for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to, like, if it's just a sheer number of balls batted down, or that could mean that another team that has a really good pass defense is going to get as many balls thrown towards them because they're handing the ball off more or whatever. So
right. I mean, does passes defense mean that it was an incomplete pass while your defense was covering it? I mean, is that... Yeah. And that's not necessarily because the defense has defended the pass. It's because maybe the quarterback threw a bad pass. I don't know. I have no idea what these...
I think why you just summed up why Zimmer doesn't like PFF, because while I think they're doing an increasingly good job of narrowing down some of these things, there's just too many factors to go into each play. Who was supposed to do what, whose fault what was. It's really hard to put numbers on that amount of chaos.
Right.
So it's I think they use chaos theory a lot in regards to that. But I thought that was interesting. I really hope, though, in regards to the Kubiak influence, that we'll see some more of what we saw with Rudy and also with Irv Smith Jr. There was a couple plays that Rudy was open down the field on one to the left that Cousins really looked ticked that he didn't complete. But I think it brings a whole new wrinkle to this offense, and it does help. Because my fear is that, and I'll just lay it out there, that teams are really going to pull a Kansas City and just cram as many people in the box as they can, because everyone's talking about this is the Dalvin Cook is the format the Vikings want for the playoffs, and even Cook himself said, and I wrote it down, that's what it looks like, that's the blueprint. He might want to take that quote back. But
he wouldn't say that if that's what they were going to do. But go ahead, finish your point.
I was just going to say, yeah, it's not like teams don't realize that the Vikings are going to keep running it down their throat anyway. Zimmer also said that, obviously running it breaks your will. This is a very physical game, and when you keep giving up, 5-10 yards each play, it breaks your will. So you can see why Zimmer wants to do it. Cook obviously is a big proponent of it and a big factor. Alexander Mattison, I can't imagine him staying around after his rookie deal expires because he looks amazing. He looks like Cook Jr. I mean, they're just so similar in their run style. Cook's obviously more polished and a little more elusive, but Madison's physical and looks great and catches passes out of the backfield. But yeah, my fear is that teams are really just going to load up on that and then force Cousins to beat them, which I should be encouraged by those odds, but you know what I mean.
I have kind of a screwy take on the whole emergence of Kyle Rudolph thing. I don't know if it's legit or not. But hear me out. Clearly, from day one, the Vikings wanted to exert their, put forward their running game and use that as their anchor, their main thing. And with good reason. They've got one of the best players in the league at the position, and the offensive line does better as run blockers than pass blockers. So that's going to be your main part of your offense. For most of the season, I have scratched my head on where the heck is Kyle Rudolph, and granted because they wanted to put Dalvin Cook forward, they made him more of a blocker, and they haven't, used him in the passing game, which we thought was Kubiak that they would, that's what we thought coming in. So I'm sitting there, why, and then they draft a tight end and they're not using him that much. What's the deal? What's going on? Well, at one point it occurred to me as Rudy started catching passes, or at least started catching touchdowns. He has now 4 in the last 3 games. I started thinking, is this part of their deal where they were just kind of establishing this running game and making it their identity, and they were just going to say, okay, now let's start folding in this so we give them something else to think about? Or is it just because Thielen's been hurt that they're going to the tight end more as more? I don't know. But, you almost wonder are they that smart that, okay, let's we've been running the ball, ramming it down there, so let's try this tight end up the middle. I don't know if it's a legit take or not, but it's really kind of interesting. And
I have a very negative take on that. Surprise.
Now we're going to eventually get Thielen back, and that's another thing for the defense to think about. I have to believe that may, Dalvin Cook's probably right. They're going to continue to run the ball until it's taken away. But in the meantime, they're starting to establish other parts of their games, and I think what they mean is they will rely on the running game for the main part of their offense, but they will continue to facilitate and use the passing game. And I think that's fine with me in the playoffs. That's usually what wins playoff games, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that, and this is pure speculation on my part, which I'm known to do. Fine. Perhaps after some of the futility of the Chiefs game where the Chiefs really did put 8 or 9 in the box to stop Cook, and things weren't really flowing that great. A lot of talk about, man, they really missed Thielen this time, which is surprising because they had so many days to prep for it. But I'm thinking perhaps Kubiak either took a bigger role or Stefanski said, I need to implement more of what Kubiak's been saying. And that's especially with Thielen being out in this game, saying, okay, my game plan clearly didn't work. Gary, what do you want to do? And of course he's going to say tight end, tight end, tight end. So I kind of figured that might be why we finally saw this emergence of these tight ends that everyone's been talking about forever. But I completely agree with you in that it's hard not to get excited when you think about the possibilities of this team with Thielen coming back, with Josh Doxson joining as a deep threat that can maybe, every week or two get a deep ball touchdown a la Aldrick Robinson. You have Irv Smith Jr., who I've been hearing plaudits of from these national announcers saying he's like next level talented and he's going to go down as this huge star. It's weird that I've heard that more from national guys than anything on the local scene. Like, I didn't hear a ton of that during training camp, or really any of it.
About
but
what, Madison?
No, Irv Smith Jr. being
Yeah.
next level talent. I think Troy Aikman was talking about him like he's going to be
A lot of people have said that.
Travis Kelce times 2 or something.
Well, he's young. He's the youngest player in the league, and he's got learning to do, and he looks like looks like a wide receiver and acts like one with the ball in his hands in a tight end position. So I think it's very exciting. I think he will. I don't know if I'd go that far as Travis Kelce, but because we don't know how physical he plays yet. He's pretty decent, pretty tough, but. I don't know. I'm not ready to go that far. I think he's going to be very good, though, and I've heard that a lot. And going back to you make the point about Dalvin Cook in the Kansas City game. Yeah, he did have 71 yards rushing, but he also had 45 receiving. So they adjusted there when they weren't finding that much success up the middle with him, or the usual success, I should say. They still got him out on the flats and threw the ball to him when Cousins wasn't missing him. So I'm all for that, Dalvin Cook all the time. But then again, as you know, Dalvin Cook is on my fantasy team and helped me teach.
What a pick, though, man! I think you got him at 7 or 8 out of 10 picks in a traditional.
And I got ribbed for taking him too early.
You did. I called you a homer at the time. I totally did not see this coming. Ezekiel Elliott fell, I think, behind him because everyone was worried he was going to pull a Le'Veon Bell, and then right after that draft, he didn't. I will say Dalvin Cook, I guess, I didn't realize that until this morning. He set the franchise record for most yards in 10 games.
That's right. Yep.
Beating AP, which is tremendous considering AP has had a season that was 8 yards shy of most rushing yards.
But isn't it
ever.
Was it rushing yards, Joe, or is it yards?
I was just going to ask you that. I think it might be yards from scrimmage.
I think it is, yeah. Which is where Dalvin does so much better than Peterson did. Peterson didn't catch that many passes, and I think that's why he set that record. But I believe it is total yards from scrimmage. So.
Yeah, and I think it's 1,415. He's AP had such a flashy style. He would, do that head bobbing thing and just house it. Cook isn't that way, but he's just much more sustainable. AP would do the Barry Sanders, -2 yards, -3 yards, 1 yard, and then 80. It wasn't Dalvin Cook's. When you look at some of these running backs and their average yard per carry, that's an average, so it doesn't really, work that way. But for him, it feels like every carry is especially in games like the Cowboys game, is a positive yardage. They ran the ball 10 times on that drive for a touchdown. Cousins commented on it, saying he's never played in an offense like this or had a running back that, Madison chipped in there too and almost had a touchdown on that drive that they said he was down on the inch yard line or whatever. But 10 rushes in a row. That's what people were calling for, I think, in the Packers game when Cousins threw that interception. Everyone in the live chat was like, why not run it? It was working.
Yeah, they were trying to get cute there, and they admitted that they tried to get too cute. They saw something that they thought would work and catch them by a surprise, and the person that got surprised was Kirk Cousins in the offensive.
I think that's an article just popped into my head. Stop getting too cute.
Yeah,
it seems like whenever there's I forget about the Chiefs game, but they said they got too cute. I think it was on defense. It always backfires on them when that happens.
It's the thing, though. Zimmer is just so old school. Pound the rock, take the clock away, score a few points, and then let my defense finish the job. Well, no offense, Mike, but your defense is not finishing the job these past couple games. So you've got to diversify a little bit on offense, have a lot of balance there, and make sure that you score enough points to what the defense is going to give up. I like that the attitude by Mike Zimmer. It's your best player on your team. Use him, and Dalvin Cook wants to. He wants the ball, and like you said earlier, you got Madison behind him. He's a step down, but he is not a huge step down.
No, not at all.
And with what he's done, his yards per carry is huge, I believe, but I don't have it in front of me. But for a backup, so it's the way to go. It's your strength. Your running game, your offensive line is better at run blocking than pass protection. So you just have to get something more out of your pass game so that the defense cannot load up on you. And so far, Kirk Cousins in the past month or so has done the job. I mean, he's had some mistakes. Oh my God, he almost threw an interception. He threw a really bad pass to Kyle Rudolph down the left sidelines that should have been picked and gone the other.
Yep.
He did get the ball knocked loose. That could have been a fumble six, although that wasn't his fault necessarily. But so there's still some. And I thought he started really slow. I mean, just like the Kansas City game, he couldn't find Dalvin Cook in the flats. In the Dallas game, those were bad passes. The first 3 or 4, and Dalvin made nice adjustments to get them. So
and those screens were working.
Yes,
they were doing a lot of redirects. Pulling the pressure one side and then just dumping the ball off to the other side, and it was working really, really well. Like you said, though, some of those passes were a little bit precarious. But what you were saying about the run game is so true, because the stat that I found this morning was that Cousins was 7 of 10 with 2 touchdowns on play actions or play fakes. Setting up, fake runs. So that's where, everyone's really talked about that, his, how he likes to run the play action. That's where he's best. That seems to be holding up this season.
He's also improved, Joe, in throwing on the run, which he did not come in as his strength. And I wouldn't rely on him I wouldn't want to make that his staple, where he's always out there on the run throwing the ball, but he has gotten better. And I've really liked the improvements that he's made. So if we can start counting on that, he becomes a heck of a better quarterback. He's not going to be Aaron Rodgers, who's phenomenal on the run, but I do like rolling him out. I do like getting him out of where he's usually so jittery.
Yes.
And he sometimes he stops, and when he puts some zip on the ball, he has got some. He's got some fire on that. He's throwing into some tight targets with just a fireball, some of them for touchdowns and some of them for first downs, and I love seeing that. I love the decisive Kirk rather than the oh my god, where's the Von Miller coming from to take my head off?
I think he feels he does just feel either way more comfortable, or like I've tried to figure out in recent weeks, maybe him running shuts that part of his brain off where he's just happy feet panicking, because that, I think, is the main difference between this season and last season, is when he rolls out or does like a naked bootleg, those plays seem to work outside of the Packers interception really, really well. I mean, he's only got 3 interceptions on the season, I believe, and 1 in the last 5 or 6 weeks.
One damn big one, unfortunately.
Yeah, one was a game killer. But outside of that, I mean, he is playing really, really well. He should get credit for it. I think, not to keep ragging on the Kansas City game, but he was in the pocket a lot more in that game than he was against the Cowboys, and I think the difference was palpable. Yeah, so I looking at a blueprint moving forward, clearly it works. It's what we wanted it to be. It's really exciting. I assume Thielen will be back after the bye.
Blueprint seems like a bad. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but blueprint seems like a bad word. I think it's going to be their anchor of their offense. I don't think it's going to be, because you know as well as anybody, and everybody else knows, you got to adjust to your opponent every game. And if you know that they're going to stack up the box to stop your strength, you're going to try it, but you better be ready to go into that game with something else you can count on. And I think they will. Kubiak is a good offensive mind, and I think Kevin Stefanski is really showing that he can call a game as well. So blueprint to me sounds like this is it. This is what we're going to do. Try and stop us, or go home. And the Vikings aren't good enough to do that. To be that one-dimensional, and B, I just don't think they will. I think they're smarter than that.
So this was kind of a wacky weekend for the NFC. The Vikings are still the 6th seed in the NFC, which should go to show you how packed the top of the NFC is.
Point.
To be 7-3 and be the 6th best team record-wise. I had Brandon Lang on my video show, which is called Purple Update, that I do Tuesday or Wednesday nights during the week. He was the first guest in the first show. He was the guy that they made the movie Two for the Money about with Matthew McConaughey and Al Pacino. And he was really ragging on the Vikings, mainly because of Zimmer and playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win, which is not the point of why I'm bringing it up. But he said, who's your Super Bowl pick? And he was kind of weird about answering that because it's so far out, and he's, a betting guy. But he said that no one can beat the Saints. It's all going to go through Nolans. And sure, it's a division game, or a divisional opponent, so it's not as easy to say or easy of a game. But that loss to the Falcons was huge. It opened up the door for everybody. The 49ers got their first loss in overtime against the Seahawks, and that's one of the Vikings' upcoming opponents, which I think will be a huge test. It's in Seattle, correct?
Yes, Vikings game is in Seattle.
Of course it is. That'll be oof. But outside of that, we have the Broncos, we have Seahawks, then I think we have the Chargers, Lions, Bears,
Yep.
Packers. So
3 home games that are plus this Denver game. 3 division home games plus the Denver game at home, and then we have Chargers and Chargers and the Seahawks on the road. And you can probably get one of those. I said a week ago that the Vikings need to get one of these next 2, and I was so distraught on Sunday night. I said if they lose this one, I don't see them doing anything in the playoffs, because this is the scenario they would have to do if they made the playoffs. They'd have to go on the road against a good opponent in a big spot where they haven't been able to win, blah, 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 ad nauseum. And I said, if they don't do it here after a 14-0 lead, then I just don't think they're going to do it anywhere else. I would still think they'd make the playoffs because they can win their home games. They've shown that.
Undefeated.
But you've got to steal a couple on the road. They have. They beat the Giants, no big deal. They won one other one. Is this their 3rd win on the road? No, it's only their second win on the road. I believe so.
Yeah.
So they've lost the Bears, the Packers, and the Chiefs on the road, and It's like these were 3 tough games. They should have won one of them. If you're not going to win those games, I'm sorry, you're not going to go anywhere in the playoffs. But
that's what's so frustrating about it, and that's what keeps sticking in the back of my mind, is that the Vikings have lost all of these games, I think, by an average of 6 points. And it was a 3-point last-second loss against the Chiefs. You look at the Packers game, the Packers got all those points immediately. You spot the Packers 21 points at home, it's going to be really hard to win, and they almost did it. That's why I've said this on the show before, but the way my brain works is Sunday night after the win, my girlfriend she's really getting nervous about these games and questioning why I'm a Vikings fan in the first place, because it's just sickening. And she was so excited. She's like, "Oh, let's go for a walk around the lake. Aren't you happy?" And I'm like, "You know what? I'm not, because now I'm just pissed off about that Chiefs game." And usually that's how my brain works, just because I am that way. But in this season, I think I'm more angry just because it might come down to one of those games that the Vikings easily could have won.
Packers game's the one I'm mad about.
Yes. It was just... It might not determine whether or not they make the playoffs, but it might determine who they play where. And playing at home is obviously going to be very important for this team, and so
I think I agree with you. I think for me though, it's the Packers game that really makes me mad, and I know for certain that if our quarterback hadn't been coming from the Big Ten, that the Vikings would have won it.
Hey, you got one in.
Yeah, that's right.
I almost blew it. Lastly, let's look at the Broncos game, because this seems like a game they very much should win. It's at home. It's against a Flacco-less Broncos team. Not that mattered, but I think Flacco played relatively well against the Vikings last time. I think they missed the game-winning field goal, if I remember correctly. No, that was a long time ago. That was like 10 years ago. We had to play them. That was the Favre year, I think. Anyway, Brandon Allen is a 6th-round pick, I believe, from 2016. He's been cut by 3 different teams since being drafted in 2016. I think Drew Lock is the quarterback of the future, but he's just coming off of IR with a thumb injury. But if this game goes sideways, I wouldn't be surprised if they threw Lock out there. They have a good wide receiver in Cortland Sutton, who I would love to see the Vikings secondary have a bounce-back game against, because they're really light on talent in the wide receiver position. So if there's any game where they can really reset and rebuild their confidence, I think it'll be this Sunday against this Broncos team at home.
Yeah, it's the Broncos aren't the pushover that their record would indicate, however, because their defense is still very good. Their defense, amazingly enough, gives up only. Well, let me see here. It is only 18.9 points per game, which is in like 7th place. The Vikings
that's right around the Vikings.
Vikings are in 5th place at 18.2. The problem with Denver is their offense, and when you got Flacco as your quarterback, and it
felt like they were trying to pull the Vikings by getting Flacco. Didn't that feel like a Vikings move from 2012 or something?
Right, absolutely. And now they're 5th from the bottom in points scored, 16.6. They don't score a heck of a lot, and so it is their offense, but their defense is just as tough as it's ever been. And you got and to listen to Mike Zimmer talk at the press conference, he knows it. They have to be worried of it. I was listening to Kirk Cousins last night on his show, and saying the same thing. Sometimes it just sounds like, we don't want to say anything bad about the other team, so we don't get bulletin board material for them. But it sounds very genuine, both of them. They know that this team is not a pushover. They've lost like 3 games by just 2 points in each game. They are not. They have a terrible record, but they are not as bad as it would indicate. And so my fear, and when I write my preview here in the next day or so, that is going to be concerns over the big letdown. Because the Vikings were so high. After winning that game. They won it for Zimmer. It's his former team. He's down there pumping his fist and swearing up a storm in the post-game locker room, and he's all fired up. And so, the team's going to take on some of that. And, they had yesterday off. They got today or Tuesday off. Now they're finally coming in. They're going to have to get to work and get ready and not come out flat like they can very well do. I'm not worried about them getting scored on a lot, but I am concerned about the Vikings offense making sure they put up some points.
Yeah, I remember when Greenway was on the show and he said that these are grown men, they're not college guys, and it's not really on the coach to get the team psyched up. It's more of an internal team thing. That kind of concerns me a little bit, just because that means it's such a out there concept that's it's not really controllable, at least easily controllable. So I'm really interested to see how they bounce back from this win. Just strangely enough, which reminds me of the Gophers too.
The Broncos are in the middle of the pack as far as giving up rushing yards, which is a good thing, about 107 per game. And where they are good, they're number 4 in passing yards per game. So you probably will see the blueprint on Sunday.
Ooh.
At US Bank.
That you would have thought the same thing. Kansas City was 30th against the run and 11th against the pass, and they got too cute, which brings this show full circle. I did want to end on one thing that we don't really ever talk about on this show. College football, the Gophers against Penn State. What a win. I think that might be the biggest win of any sport in my lifetime outside of Game 7 in 1991 with the Twins. I'm a little worried that they don't play well against Iowa, and they're going to Iowa. But they seem to have their sights focused on it. Before the season, one of their main goals was to beat Iowa in Iowa. So I'm not too worried, but man, the emotional letdown must be crazy. What a great game. Did you have a chance to watch it?
Oh, the Penn State game, I watched every play. I loved it. My only regret is I wasn't there. I should have thought about going down and getting a ticket, but it was completely sold out. And you probably could have scalped something and paid through the teeth for a Gopher game, which would have been awesome.
Or gone to ticketclub.com and used our discount code SKOLPTSD. Ugh,
that's what I should have done.
I feel dirty.
No, you're exactly right. I wish I had thought of it, because that was you saw the way the fans stormed the field.
Yes.
On all those students. I mean, that was just a sight that you hadn't seen there. And I grew up, my dad had season tickets, and we'd go up to a lot of games. And I'm a bigger Vikings fan than I am Gopher fan, but I've seen plenty, and I still follow them all the time. I watch every game. But that one, I was just I was just as nervous too. That one came down the wire, and it was a blast. And the Viking or the Gophers really showed just how tough they are. It was great to see. I hope they continue it.
Yeah, I mean, they have a chance to go undefeated, and a lot of people are saying the consolation prize might be the Rose Bowl, which is just insane. If they don't make the playoffs, they'll make the Rose Bowl. I never thought I would see the Gophers in the Rose Bowl. The reason I don't follow college football, and I went to the U of M and graduated from there with 2 degrees. Good for me. I have to be clearly emotionally invested in what I'm watching. Like, I'm very emotionally invested in the Vikings, but it's hard for me to do that with the Gophers because they've just been so bad. And so this is just, I cannot believe what is happening. And I ripped on PJ Fleck on this show a couple times. I didn't like the roll the boat stuff. Granted, I read about what it meant this week, and I feel like a complete jerk for.
It's a great slogan.
It really is, and the story behind it with his son dying and everything is just, yeah, that's really.
Oh,
sad.
I don't even know. I have to check that out.
Yeah, the philosophy is like to keep your back to the future because you can't control it, but just keep working towards it, basically.
Right. I got to give a shout out to my cousin Mike, who I was with this week, and he. We were talking about it before the game, and he said, it goes, I've had season tickets for 35 years, and he goes, it's been my lifelong dream to see him play in the Rose Bowl once. So I'm hoping that he gets that, because he had just a blast there at the stadium on Saturday, and deservedly so. If you're buying tickets for that long, I mean, we all grew up with him, but he's held on to his, and that's neat. Good for him. I hope he gets his wish. Play in the Rose Bowl.
Wow. So I will end with a commercial from one of our partner podcasts. Tune in to all of our podcasts in the Big Heads Media app or website. That's our show, Morning Joe's. That's About the Labor with Kirby, Sean, Nick, and Nick Olson, Kirby O'Connor, Sean Borman, and also Load the Box with Jordan Hawthorne and Jack Day. But here's the commercial.
Hey everyone, Chris Williams here, inviting you to join me and my co-host Perry Seibert every other Friday for our podcast. We're watching here. Every other Friday, we talk movies, from our favorite directors to looks back at vintage releases to our thoughts on today's current trends. This is all backed up with the knowledge of 2 guys who've been writing about films for years and talking about them their entire lives. From Spielberg to Soderbergh and Malick to Michael Bay, we are opinionated moviegoers giving you opinionated movie talk. Tune in wherever you get your podcasts from Big Heads Media.
And now, on with the show.
All right, we'll catch you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in, and skol.